Feminine leadership didn't fail in corporate environments. It was never measured correctly. You're respected, you're competent, your leadership works, but you're leading with a quiet restraint, constantly monitoring, editing, and translating your natural instincts so they land as credible in the room. Here's the mistake most women don't realize they're making. They assume their relational intelligence, discernment, and embodied presence are soft traits that need managing rather than strategic assets. And the cost of that misread is significant. Over time, it creates decision fatigue, energy drain, and the sense that success keeps landing, but fulfillment doesn't. Today, I want to talk about why feminine leadership isn't soft. It's strategic. By the end of this, you'll understand why feminine leadership was never ineffective and how to lead with discernment and presence without translating yourself to fit outdated models. Hello, and if we haven't met yet, I'm Amanda L. Christian, founder of Soul Fire Leadership. I spent over 30 years leading inside global finance and technology environments before shifting my work to focus on how high achieving women who are successful on paper but quietly misaligned in how they're leading. This channel is where we have the real conversations about leadership, identity, and what it takes to lead with clarity instead of self override. Most women in male dominated workspaces didn't suppress their natural leadership instincts because they were ineffective. They did it because those instincts weren't recognized as strategic. That distinction matters because when leadership energy gets misclassified as soft, women don't stop leading. They just start leaking energy. Let's be precise. Modern leadership models weren't built with bad intent. They were shaped by industrial efficiency, risk management, and scale. In that architecture, the model rewarded speed, containment, and output. Speed over discernment, containment over emotional intelligence, output over stabilizing presence. Contained emotion was easier to manage. Fast decisions were safer in volatile markets. Metrics were easier to defend than morale or trust. This wasn't a conspiracy, it was architecture. And inside that architecture, women learned something subtle but powerful. Their natural strengths needed translation. Empathy had to be justified. Intuition had to be backed by data. Presence alone wasn't enough to be perceived as authority. So they adapted, they edited, they sped up, they over prepared and overperformed. And over time, many stopped trusting their internal signals. Not because those signals were wrong, but because they weren't rewarded. I learned this firsthand while leading enterprise scale technology initiatives inside a global financial institution. Complex systems, high stakes, no margin for error. What made me effective wasn't force, it was discernment. Slowing the room down, tracking not just the work, but the humans doing it. Adjusting plans to reality instead of optics. And I was told, quietly, to be careful with that, to tone it down. That instruction didn't make me a better leader, it made me a more performative one. When we step out of ideology and into data, the picture gets clearer. Longitudinal research from McKinsey and Harvard Business Review consistently show women scoring higher in leadership capabilities that directly correlate with long-term performance. Relational awareness, talent development, adaptability during change, ethical decision making, and trust building. These are not soft skills, they're systems level competencies. Leaders who can regulate themselves under pressure, read interpersonal dynamics, and respond rather than react create lower attrition, more resilient teams, greater stability during sustained uncertainty. Now, let's add one more layer. AI excels at speed, optimization, and pattern recognition. It does not excel at contextual judgment, moral discernment, emotional nuance, or sensing what a system needs next. As automation accelerates, presence becomes leverage. When I use the word feminine, I'm not talking about women versus men. I'm talking about how leadership energy moves. Feminine leadership is embodied rather than performative, relational without being self sacrificing, decisive without being forceful, patient without being passive. It stabilizes systems instead of dominating them. Every woman I work with has a distinct way of leading. Some bring calm coherence into chaos. Some synthesize complexity into clarity. Some attune so deeply that people feel safe enough to tell the truth. Most have been taught to override that energy. When a woman leads from alignment instead of performance, decision fatigue drops, influence increases, burnout stops being inevitable. Not because she's necessarily doing less, but because she's no longer spending energy pretending. We're seeing the signals: change saturation, cognitive overload, trust erosion, exhaustion mislabeled as resilience. The leaders who will thrive are not the loudest or the fastest. They're the ones who can hold complexity without rushing to false certainty, regulate themselves during ambiguity, create psychological safety without losing authority, make decisions that account for humans, not just metrics. Presence is becoming currency. Discernment is becoming leverage. And emotional intelligence, real emotional intelligence, is becoming non negotiable. Here's the question I'll leave you with: which of your natural leadership traits have you been managing, muting, or translating to fit the room? And what if the very thing you were taught to tone down is the strategic advantage this next chapter requires? That question isn't meant to provoke action. It's meant to restore self trust. And from there, everything else becomes easier to decide. If this conversation resonated, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. It helps this message reach more professionals who are stuck in the same loop. And if you want more of these real conversations, the ones about leadership, alignment, identity, and the inner game of your career, hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Because we're just getting started.